Hello, hello, hello. I'm Alan, and today, I don't know why I had the multiple hellos. Hello and welcome. I'm Alan, and today we are doing my weekend review series that is extremely behind for this weekend. I've just, yeah. Sometimes that depression gets to you, you don't want to do a thing. Otherwise, I'd be well caught up and have a little backlog I can work with. Anyway, um, let's go ahead and jump into it. As always, the first thing we're going to look at is sports, and pretty much everything is over with except baseball. Although I do want to give a shout out to the U.S. women's soccer team for winning the women's side of the World Cup. Congratulations, ladies. It's a victory well earned. But other than that, the only thing really going on is baseball. So let's take a look at the standings as the loading wheel circles and circles and circles. Okay. In the American League East, the New York Yankees lead with a record of 57-31. 6.5 games behind them are the Tampa Bay Rays, who have a record of 52-39. They're followed by Boston, Toronto, and Baltimore. In the AL Central, Minnesota Twins lead with a record of 56-33. Cleveland Indians are 5.5 games behind with a record of 50-38. And they're followed up by the White Sox, the Royals, and the Tigers. And in the AL West, the Houston Astros lead with a record of 57-33. They're followed by the Oakland Athletics, who are 7.5 games behind with a record of 50-41. And the rest of the division rounds out with the Rangers, the Los Angeles Angels, and the Seattle Mariners. Now let's look at the NL. In the NL East, the leader is the Atlanta Braves, who have a record of 54-37. 6 games behind is the Washington Nationals, who have a record of 47-42. And the rest of the division rounds out with Philadelphia, the Mets, and the Marlins in that order. In the NL Central, the Chicago Cubs lead with a record of 47-43. Half a game behind is the Milwaukee Brewers with a record of 47-44. And the rest of the division rounds out with the Cardinals, Pirates, and the Reds. And of note, they are the closest division altogether because the Cubs lead the division, but last place in that division are the Cincinnati Reds, but they're only 4.5 games behind. So it's a pretty hard fought over division right now. And finally, in the NL West, the Los Angeles Dodgers lead with a record of 60-32. 13 and a half games behind them is the Arizona Diamondbacks with a record of 46-45. And the rest of the division sees the Padres, the Rockies, and the Giants. And that is baseball's current standings. Not too bad. We're about 90 games in. So it's starting to take shape. We'll have to start keeping up with the playoff matches here after a while, because they're starting to get down to the playoff race. So now, with that done, let's go and look at science. All apologies to Thomas Dolby. And she blinded me with science. Anyway, from ScienceNews.org, the largest seaweed bloom ever detected spanned the Atlantic in 2018. Ancient DNA reveals the origins of the Philistines. Why some insect eggs are spherical while others look like hot dogs. Rogue immune cells can infiltrate old brains. East Asians may have been reshaping their skulls 12,000 years ago. Okay. Europe's latest heat wave has been linked to climate change. Well, duh. I mean, when it's in the hundreds, that far north, I mean, you've got to realize something's wrong there, people. This brain region may be why some robots send chills down your spine. California's new vaccine rules are kept more kindergartners up to date. Vision cells can pull double duty in the brain, detecting both color and shape. CO2 emissions are on track to take us beyond 1.5 degrees of global warming, which puts us in the severe danger zone. Slime shows how algae have shaped our climate, evolution, and daily lives. How the 2019 eclipse will differ from 2017's, and what that means for science. Is climate change causing Europe's intense heat? A scientist weighs in. Well, based on the previous headline there in the list, which is later on in the week, yeah, it does. We do find it to be linked to climate change. A climate change causing We done read that. Latest claim of turning hydrogen into a metal may be the most solid yet. And the earliest known galaxy merger occurred shortly after the Big Bang. And that was from sciencenews.org. Now, sciencemag.org. Let's see what they have going on. All right. Targeted gene insertion. Globally synchronous crop failures. I was reading all that. Clearing the path for more effective immunotherapies for pancreatic cancer. Come along now, there you go. The genetics of microbiome diversity. FDA enforcement actions plummet under Trump. Sharing the land between nature and people. Aviation's dirty secret. Airplane contrails are a surprisingly potent cause of global warming. Adding 1 billion hectares of forest could help check global warming. It's just, where are we going to plant all these trees? Because they're trying to log all these other places or clear the areas for other usage. So that's kind of my question. Where are we going to plant these trees where they don't want to develop the land? Gut bacteria could be key to producing tastier cow's milk. Astronomers probe atmosphere of alien world that's a cross between Earth and Neptune. Mount Sinai Institute director facing discrimination allegations leaves post. Even if you don't play contact sports, you could develop signs of traumatic brain injury. And that was from sciencemag.org. Now, let's hop over to YouTube. It's thinking. There we go. And we're going to look at a few different channels. And since we're still doing science, let's look at some of the science channels I have in my list. So here we go. It's taking its time. Science. Anything from this one? I apologize for taking so long. My computer runs immensely slowly for some reason. Okay, from Star Talk. Let's make America smart again. Neil deGrasse Tyson has a conversation with Cory Booker. Let's see if there's anything else from some of my science channels. And it's just taken me forever. From TED, Technology, Education, and Design. Come on, load up. Videos. We have the amazing brains and morphing skin of octopi and other cephalopods. Floating cities. The Lego house and other architectural forms of the future. Everything happens for a reason. And other lies I've loved. That sounds interesting. The lies our culture tells us about what matters and a better way to live. So that's from TED. Let's see if there's anything else in regards to science. From Veritasium. How a fish saved the Vikings. From TED Ed, Technology, Education, and Design Ed, Education. These are little short videos. Let's see if they have anything that would be useful in the terms of science. What makes TB the world's most infectious killer? And the secret language of trees. Now, let's take a look and see if there's anything else we can look at as far as culture and history, since we are done with science. And it's just taken me forever to scroll through this. I do apologize. I know I can't see. But it's all I can do to kind of fill in the space because I don't want dead silence for you, so. From Fact Fiend, which I do enjoy. If you've never been to the channel, check it out. Fact Fiend with Carl Smallwood. He's had some videos on the chess master who quit like a boss. He basically played and played and played until he was 20 something and just said, all right, I'm done, because he was able to beat pretty much anyone he played chess against. And the T-1000 got the robe by staring, in which he talks about Robert Patrick the man who played the T-1000, the liquid metal Terminator, got the role by staring menacingly into the camera. From Biographics, we have some good videos from Simon Whistler that include Benjamin Franklin, the founding father, Josip Broz Tito, Too Tough for Stalin, and Lee Harvey Oswald, the man who killed a president. So that's what we have to look at from YouTube. With that done, let's take a look at this week in history. Okay. Come on now, computer, work with me. That's why I'm not pulling anything up. I need to go back to June. Come on now. Scroll down so I can scroll down. There you go. June the 29th. There we go. Finally flipped over. June the 29th, 1995. U.S. Space Shuttle docks with Russian space station. A time when we focused on more reasonable pursuits, such as the scientific. Now it's, they're dangerous. Let's see. What else do we have? June the 29th, 1958. Pelé leads Brazil to its first World Cup title. June the 29th, 1613. The Globe Theatre burns down. The Globe Theatre, where most of Shakespeare's plays debuted, burned down on this day in 1613. Well, June the 29th, 1967. Actress Jane Mansfield dies in car crash. Of course, she was one of early Hollywood's blonde bombshells. Come on, work with me. All right, June the 30th. As it spins and spins. June the 30th, 1936. Gone with the Wind is published. It would only take it 3 years to be turned into the blockbuster movie Gone with the Wind. which I need to do a video on. The actual movie is pretty wild. You can find out a lot from the actual movie. I remember seeing it once in college because we were required to watch it, but June the 30th, 1974, Soviet dancer Mikhail Baryshnikov defects from the USSR. If I could get the thing to work. Alright. June the 30th, 1520. The Spanish retreat from Aztec capital. Faced with an Aztec revolt against the rule, forces under the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortes fight their way out of Tenochtitlan at heavy cost. Known to the Spanish as La Noche Triste, or the Night of Sadness, many soldiers drowned in Lake Texcoco. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. But yeah. June the 30th, 1934. Hitler purges members of his own Nazi party in the Night of the Long Knives. In Germany, Nazi leader Adolf Hitler orders a bloody purge of his own political party, assassinating hundreds of Nazis whom he believed had the potential to become political enemies in the future. And that was June the 30th. So let's go to July the 1st. Come along now. There we go. July the 1st, 1997. Hong Kong returned to China. Also on July 1st, 1916, Battle of the Somme begins. A big moment for Teddy Roosevelt and the U.S. in the Spanish-American War. July the 1st, 1898, the Battle of San Juan Hill. When, as part of their campaign to capture Spanish-held Santiago de Cuba on the southern coast of Cuba, the U.S. Army 5th Corps engages Spanish forces at El Caney and San Juan Hill. July the 1st, 1867, Canadian Independence Day. The Autonomous Dominion of Canada, a confederation of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and the future provinces of Ontario and Quebec is officially recognized by Great Britain with the passage of the British North America Act. And while they had self-autonomy, I believe they were still under technical rule by the British for a while more. If I remember correctly. Because I know I did a video on the British flag, or not British, but the Canadian flags. July the 1st, 1863. The Battle of Gettysburg begins. One of the largest military conflicts in North American history begins this day when Union and Confederate forces collide at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It would be a 3-day battle that would result in a retreat to Virginia by Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. Okay. Now let's look at July the 2nd. And while it takes its time to pull up there, alright. Still looks good. Okay. And it's thinking. Come on, computer. Work with me here. July the 2nd, 1964. President Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act. It's a crying shame we had to wait this long to see equal rights among people just because of race. Unfortunately, there's a racist history with America that is just tied to this country that's ugly. That is a horrible blemish. July the 2nd, 1839. Mutiny on the Amistad slave ship. Early in the morning, Africans on the Cuban schooner Amistad rose up against their captors, killing 2 crew members and seizing control of the ship, which had been transporting them to a life of slavery on a sugar plantation at Puerto Principe, Cuba. July the 2nd, 1937. Amelia Earhart disappears. Let's see, what else? July the 2nd, 1881. President James A. Garfield shot. Only 4 months into his administration, President James A. Garfield is shot as he walks through a railroad waiting room in Washington, D.C. His assailant, Charles J. Guiteau, was a disgruntled and perhaps insane office seeker. All right. July the 2nd, 1776. Congress votes for independence. On July the 2nd, 1776, the Second Continental Congress, assembled in Philadelphia, formally adopts Richard Henry Lee's resolution for independence from Great Britain. The vote is unanimous, with only New York abstaining. So even though we voted on July the 2nd, we would not get declaration of actual independence until the 4th. But my computer's taking its time as I look at July the 3rd. July the 3rd, 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg ends. The Battle of Gettysburg was an immense moment in the Civil War. If it's one of the few battles you ever learn about the Battle of Gettysburg, because the cost of lives made it one of the bloodiest. Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. You know, the one that starts 407 years ago. This nation came to be blah, 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 blah. It's a huge battle, so if there's ever one you want to know about, it's often considered one of the battles, too, in which it turns around the momentum for the North. Because until that point, Robert E. Lee had been marching his Army of Northern Virginia through Maryland and other parts of the North up into Pennsylvania. But the Battle of Gettysburg seems to be where that momentum stops. He has to retreat, and you start to see the tide of the war turn at that point. But anyway, July the 3rd, 1890, Idaho becomes the 43rd state. Let's see. July the 3rd, 1775. George Washington takes command of the Continental Army. July the 3rd, in 1775, George Washington rides out in front of the American troops gathered at Cambridge Common in Massachusetts and draws his sword, formally taking command of the Continental Army. And July the 3rd, 1918, Muhammad V, Sultan of Turkey, dies. He was Sultan of Turkey. He led the Turkish forces in the final months of fighting against the Allied powers during World War I. Muhammad V, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, died at the age of 73. And now, a date most people won't forget in America, and I'm sure to any intercontinental viewers of anywhere besides the U.S., Americans won't let you forget that July the 4th is Independence Day. Sometimes we're a bit overly proud of it. July the 4th, 1776. The American colonies declare independence. Okay, what else happened though on July the 4th? July the 4th, 1884. France gives the Statue of Liberty to the U.S. I believe the Statue of Liberty was created by what was his name? Gustav Eiffel, the same man who created the Eiffel Tower. A moment for science. July the 4th, 1997. The Pathfinder lands on Mars. Here's an interesting one. July the 4th, 1826. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams die. On July the 4th, 1826, former presidents Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, who were once fellow patriots and then adversaries, die on the same day within 5 hours of each other. July the 4th, 1863. Confederates surrender Vicksburg. The Confederacy is torn in two when General John C. Pemberton surrenders to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Vicksburg, Mississippi. The Vicksburg Campaign was one of the Union's most successful of the war. Like I said, after Gettysburg, things just seemed to turn. And finally, let's look at July the 5th. Here's one for the perverts in us. July the 5th, 1946. The bikini is introduced. French designer Louis Reard unveils a daring two-piece swimsuit at the Piscine Molitor, a popular swimming pool in Paris. Parisian showgirl Micheline Bernardini modeled the new fashion, which Reard dubbed bikini, inspired by the news-making U.S. atomic test that took place off the Bikini Atoll in the Pacific Ocean earlier that week. Alright, what else happened on July the 5th? July the 5th, 1950. The first U.S. fatality in the Korean War. Private Kenneth Shadrick, a 19-year-old infantryman from Skin Fort, West Virginia. July the 5th, 1954, Elvis Presley records, "That's Alright, Mama. That's alright with me." Sam Phillips, the owner and operator of Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee. With the discovery of Elvis Presley, which is perfectly fair, though it fails to account for the roles of 4 others in making that discovery possible. They record, "That's Alright, Mama." July the 5th, 1996, Dolly the sheep becomes the first successfully cloned mammal. July the 5th, 1865, conspirators court-martialed for plotting to kill Lincoln, Grant, and Andrew Johnson. President Andrew Johnson signs an executive order that confirms the military conviction of a group of people who had conspired to kill the late President and Abraham Lincoln, then Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Army. Let's see. July the 5th, 1921, the Black Sox scandal. Chicago White Sox accused of throwing the World Series. After Judge Hugo Friend denies a motion to quash the indictments against Major League Baseball players accused of throwing the 1919 World Series. A trial begins with jury selection. And that, of course, is the team that included Shoeless Joe Jackson. If you've ever watched the movie Field of Dreams, he's one of the major baseball players that shows up asking, "If you build it, they will come." And that was all for this week in history. Now, let's go ahead and look at the news, but before we do, let's look at the top idiots of the week for June the 29th through July the 5th. And we have plenty of them, 12 this week. Mike Cernovich, for claiming Bernie Sanders was being too mean to Trump. "Oh, you poor little baby." Please. Mike Davis, for saying that bringing up potential issues of rape is sinking to new lows when it came to Supreme Court confirmations. I kind of want to know if my Supreme Court justices have committed such severe crimes. I don't know about you, moron. Judge James Troiano for ruling a boy accused of rape innocent because he came from a good family. Dave Weigel for calling Jordan Chariton of Status Quo an employee of the Bernie Sanders campaign after Jordan calls him out, and then Weigel then deletes the tweet. Tommy Lahren for defending the Customs and Border Patrol for their actions on a secret Facebook page, because they have the right to be sexist and racist when it's their job to take care of these people. I kind of want people who are guards and security to not look to destroy every one of these people they have to guard. Glenn Kessler for trying to attack Bernie in a fact check article in the Washington Post that says Bernie is factually correct, but his point doesn't really matter. How does it not matter? He proved that the top 3 people in the U.S. own as much wealth as the bottom 50%. 3 people. Was it because one of them was your boss, Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post? Was that it, Glenn boy? John Delaney for still lying about Medicare and being pointed out as wrong by Ali Velshi, who lived in Canada and knows how a socialized healthcare system works. He understands it a lot better than John Delaney. Donald Trump Jr. for retweeting a right-wing commentator who questioned Kamala Harris's race, saying she wasn't really black. The right wing's full of idiots. But so is the left, unfortunately. Marcos Malitsis for saying Bernie Sanders is too consistent. What? 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 Ivanka Trump for thinking she can be a politician and converse with world leaders. Donnie Deutsch for saying less policy, more anti-Trump is how you win. No, you don't, you moron. But what do you expect? He's one of these rich idiots. And of course, as always, Donald Trump, for still being the complete and utter moron he has always been. And that's our top idiots of the week for June the 29th through July the 5th. So with that said, let's finally look at the news of the week. Starting with Saturday. Secular Talk. From Secular Talk. Chuck Todd's absolute worst Democratic debate question. Eric Swalwell's limp attack on Biden backfires. Frat boy Michael Bennet lights up Joe Biden. Democratic candidates tell you their top priority. Hickenlooper says, if we move left, then the GOP will call us mean games. Grading Democratic candidates' closing statements. From Status Coup. Trump supporter to Jordan. Do you have proof Iraq didn't have weapons of mass destruction? What? Ugh. Trump supporters are morons. I swear they are. There's a stupid and they're being led by a complete idiot. Jordan confronts NBC News at the Democratic debate for denying status quo media credentials. And Bernie Sanders supporters are not buying DNC reform. From the Rational National, Trudeau, Canadian media, and NDP's New Deal with Christo Aivalis. From the Humanist Report, AOC shreds third way after they attack student debt cancellation. Democratic voters are horribly misinformed about Joe Biden, Poe finds. From Vice News, China's vanishing Muslims, the Uyghurs, inside the most dystopian place in the world. And Trump 2020 rally and the Hep C cure. From Vox, the problem with sex testing in sports. From MCSC, Real Time with Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi refused to allow Bill Maher to control her narrative. I can't talk today, I swear. And from TBTV, latest politics, Kamala Harris taking on Joe Biden sparks fake outrage. On Sunday, from the Rational National, did AOC, Jayapal, and Omar just reveal their 2020 endorsement? From Vice News, this California Valley is in a battle with LA over water. From the Patriot Act, Hassan Minaj picks his Harry Potter house. From Tim Black TV, Andrew Yang and Marianne Williamson say their mics were cut off during the debate. From Last Week Tonight, John Oliver looks at the warehouse industry and how they treat workers. And from MCSC, Bernie Sanders wins, loses, and draws for both debates. Tulsi's sister dunks on MSNBC's Warren bias during the debate. Immigrant concentration camp makes $750 per day per child. Tulsi channels her inner Ali to beat down Tim Ryan. Debate recap: Kamala's lies exposed, Game Time and NBC superimposed pimple on Tulsi debunked. Why that pimple is even a thing, I don't know. On Monday, from Secular Talk, Biden's support plummets after the debate. MSNBC says, forget about policy, just be anti-Trump. How's that going to help you win, idiots? And now I've got hiccups. Give me a moment. Trump becomes first U.S. president to step into North Korea. Ivanka Trump's awkward attempt to talk to world leaders. From Status Quo, Black Trump supporter calls Bernie Sanders a Cherokee Indian and dodges Central Park 5 question. Bernie Sanders Tulsi Gabbard supporter says Joe Biden talks like a neoliberal member of the bourgeoisie. Bernie Sanders allows NBC News to misrepresent his Medicare for All plan. And Bernie Sanders has the highest favorability rating after Democratic debate. From Philip DeFranco, the fight between Taylor Swift and Scooter Braun, who recently purchased her ode masters that were under Big Machine Records. An update to the protests in Hong Kong and its effect. And an incident where Antifa are accused of attacks. I'd take that with a grain of salt, because often the right-wing media likes to skew things until actual footage shows different of what they say. So I don't believe at all Antifa just attacked them, because I've seen such accusations by right-wing media before, and it's often been proven to be lies. The Rational National. The problem with Canadian media with Christo Avalos. MSNBC guest says Bernie's problem is that he's too consistent. Really? Really? And people drink from toilets. AOC reports that she tours a border facility. From Democracy Now! U.S. and World News. Donald Trump set foot in North Korea. Hong Kong protests continue as police push back. U.S. and China reach trade truce to stop tariffs. Trump met Saudi Arabia prince, calling him a reformer without questioning him about the Khashoggi murder. Protest in the Sudan. Bomb explosion in Afghanistan. Police in Italy arrest a German ship captain. U.S. Senate rejects measure to help that would prevent going to war without approval. The Koch brothers now want a no more war policy. U.S. Supreme Court banned an Alabama measure to restrict abortions. U.S. Supreme Court also agreed to hear a Trump administration request to repeal DACA. A judge blocked Trump from using funds to build the border wall. 9/11 spokesman Luis Alvarez dies. James Fields was sentenced to life in prison for killing Heather Heyer in Charlottesville. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signs a bill to force those formerly incarcerated to pay all fines before they can vote. 2020 candidates Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro to visit detention center in Clint, Texas. Democrats condemn Donald Trump Jr. for retweeting a right-wing name who attacked Kamala Harris's race. 36 Jewish protesters protest ICE activities. And the largest LGBTQ demonstrations in New York. Trump makes history by walking into North Korea. Could this help to finally end the Korean War? We will not be quiet. Stonewall was a riot. Queer Liberation March returns pride to radical roots. Democrats shooting themselves in the foot by attacking Trump on North Korea, which personally I agree with. As much as I think Trump's a moron, at least he's trying to end the war, and going to North Korea is a good step in the right direction. Now let's see if he actually is able to further act on that. From the Humanist Report, Trump would really love to negotiate some sort of nuclear deal with Iran. We had a nuclear deal with Iran, but you got rid of it because it was originally done by the black man Obama. From Vice News, the vigilantes filling in potholes in Oakland. From Tim Black TV, Kamala Harris, online attacks fall flat. From MCSC, Warren enjoyed Tulsi's debate speech so much she plagiarized it the next day. And from C-SPAN, President Trump meets Kim Jong-un at demilitarized zone and the U.S.-China trade deal possibilities. On Tuesday, from Secular Talk, Canadian TV host stunned by John Delaney's anti-Medicare for all BS. Honestly, Delaney's just a shill for insurance agencies. That's all he is. Only 5% of Americans want war with Iran. Propaganda fell on behalf of the Trump administration. Democrats don't have to pick between Rust Belt voters or their base. Honestly, if you put forward the best policies, they'll both vote for you. That was the problem in the first place. Meghan McCain says, Democrats need voters like me. And the silliest Bernie critique yet, he's too consistent. You know, I kind of like my candidates to be consistent, not to flip-flop. From Status Quo, how NBC News, MSNBC propped up Kamala Harris during the Democratic debate. Bernie Sanders smeared again by the Washington Post for truthful criticism of income equality. Bernie Sanders chooses not to go after Joe Biden for making love to Wall Street fat cats. And Harvard ignores Poison Flint and hires ex-Michigan Governor Rick Schneider. From Philip DeFranco, outrage over fanfic of One Direction's Harry Styles and Louis Tomlinson on the HBO show Euphoria. Nike pulls the Betsy Ross flag sneakers after an outrage, which causes a counter outrage. Because it's an outrage culture. Both right and left. The right can try to accuse it, the left all they want, but it's the right and the left. They both cry. Secret Facebook group made of current and former Customs and Border Patrol made sexual and horrible comments about immigrants and U.S. Congress members. Honestly, that's unacceptable. This is why there needs to be a U.S.-wide retraining of security and policing groups and departments. So not only police departments in every town and city, but also national groups like CBP and ICE. Frankly, I should think they should get rid of ICE. That's the whole point of CBP. From the Rational National, Jewish protesters stand up to ICE. And Hickenlooper 2020 in shambles after Morning Joe's advice. From Democracy Now!, U.S. and World News, 2 immigrant prisons visited by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus members who found abhorrent conditions. Federal judge ordered the CBP to allow health officials into the detention centers. The Associated Press released a video of a 12-year-old girl and her 6-year-old sister who spoke of the conditions in the detention centers. A Facebook group under investigation by Customs and Border Patrol for its content by current and former CBP members. Father and his young daughter who drowned at the Rio Grande were buried in El Salvador. Mexico's new National Guard began deploying troops over the country. over 80 Haitian immigrants deported from Mexico. Hong Kong police used tear gas on protesters. Iran surpassed the limit of uranium enrichment laid out in the 2015 deal. Japan resumes commercial whaling after a stop of 30 years. U.S. Department of Agriculture plans to move 2 centers from Washington to Kansas City. Trump wants tanks and fighter jets for his 4th of July. And the D.C. Council expressed its opposition to war machines in D.C. For his 4th of July salute. Salute to America. He's an idiot. I swear it. Anyway. Her days are numbered. Calls grow for Hong Kong leader to resign as protesters storm the legislature. A new birther smear. Attacks on Kamala Harris are just the latest in Trump family's racist record. And Kamala Harris says she was a progressive prosecutor, but her record tells another story. From the Humanist Report, AOC exposes horrific conditions in migrant detention facilities. Nancy Pelosi hands Mitch McConnell a huge legislative victory for no reason. From Vice News, researchers are making a dictionary for Korea that doesn't exist yet. Some more news. John Kelly, the godfather and profiteer of the kids in camps. From TBTV, Joe Biden versus Kamala Harris, neither one is a victim. And Andrew Yang's huge announcement. From Vox, why Iraq's great rivers are dying. From MCSC, how the debate questions should have been answered. Dialing a Politician Live, and Warren pushing for war. When you realize the Democratic debate is a Warren rally, and Cory Booker exposed, more debate questions and tweet at me, bro, with Ron Placone. And finally, from C-SPAN, Mayor Pete Buttigieg on police shooting in South Bend, Indiana. On Wednesday, from Secular Talk, Canadian cartoonist was fired for politically incorrect drawing. Billionaires against war is now a thing? I'm kind of like Kyle. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to see people using their money for something good, but it's only because they have money they're going to have any chance to drive something like that through, which is the sad part. LGBTQ panel really doesn't like Mayor Pete. Right-wing economics are debunked. From Status Quo, a Washington Post reporter accuses Jordan of working for the Bernie Sanders campaign. live from hashtag Never Again protests against ICE and the child detention in California, on which Ty Bayless reports. Did Elizabeth Warren turn away from our Medicare for All question and then end her press session? CNN's anti-Bernie Sanders crusade continues, this time by deceptively propping up Pete Buttigieg. And live gathering for Julian Assange on his 48th birthday. From Philip DeFranco, battle between Trump and the Supreme Court over citizenship question on the census, which the Supreme Court deemed not needed and unlawful, despite Trump saying they will move forward. Boeing pledging money to victims of the 737 MAX victims. I think I mistyped that. Boeing pledging money to victims of 737 MAX crashes. There we go. That works better. Judge James Troiano let a boy go free after sexual assault because the judge said the boy comes from a good family. Morons. From the Rational National, another Bernie healthcare claim proven true, and media spins Bernie's impressive grassroots fundraising numbers. From Democracy Now!, U.S. and World News, report and photos released over detention centers by the Department of Homeland Security's internal watchdog. DHS on lookout for new sites to hold immigrants. Another Central American migrant died in custody. Federal judge in Washington state blocks Trump plan to lock up immigrants while they wait for their hearings. Trump said immigration raids would begin after July the 4th weekend. Protests to close the child detention camps are happening. Trump administration dropped his citizenship question because of the court ruling against it. Overnight airstrike in Libya that killed 40. Ethiopian members of the Israel protested the murder of a citizen. Gallagher found not guilty of all but one charge for war crimes. Federal prosecutors in Arizona want to try Scott Warren again for providing food and water to immigrants. Black patient arrested outside hospital despite wearing hospital gown and IV drip. Nike removes their Betsy Ross sneakers. Tanks at ready for Trump's 4th of July parade despite opposition. Chubb will no longer provide insurance to coal companies. And last month was the hottest June on record with heat waves in Europe and Alaska. Scott Warren of No More Deaths faces retrial for providing humanitarian aid to migrants in Arizona. Border agents caught posting racist, sexist messages about migrants and AOC in secret Facebook group. From the Humanist Report, Bernie corrects Kamala. Yes, Medicare for All does get rid of private insurance. And Bernie Sanders gloats after poll disproves key health insurance talking point. From Vice News, inside New York's Pride March, the movement's pushing back. Here's some explosion porn from the US government and the storming of Hong Kong's parliament. From TBTV, Tim Black TV, Tulsi Gabbard's awesome debate performance tainted by whack conspiracy theories. And Bernie Sanders gets burned again. From Vox, how India runs the world's biggest election. From MCSC, Emma Vigeland insinuates Tulsi Gabbard is part of a cult. And Elizabeth Warren attacks Trump over North Korea peace talks. And from C-SPAN, lessons learned from Judge Kavanaugh confirmation process. On Thursday, from Secular Talk, Trump's melting brain is the reason for staying in Afghanistan. Media ignores facts to pretend Bernie is done. Trump babbles his way through homelessness question. And is the Bernie campaign listening to Secular Talk? From Status Quo, these Trump reporters are all the fireworks you need on 4th of July. Bernie Sanders is now the preferred candidate on health care, and Medicare for All has majority support. Bernie Sanders supporter says economy is booming for the top 1% and the military-industrial complex. Julian Assange supporter says New York Times asking government permission before publishing its stories. But he's the danger? From Democracy Now!, Ta-Nehisi Coates and Danny Glover make the case for reparations at historic congressional hearing. What to the slave is 4th of July? James Earl Jones reads Frederick Douglass's historic speech. From Philip DeFranco, deleted scenes from Toy Story 2 shown about harassment. Belle Delphine selling her bathwater. Halle Bailey to play live-action Little Mermaid, causing confusion. The DA drops its case against mother who was shot. The Alabama DA drops its case against the mother who was shot, resulting in the death of the fetus. And a phone app in China that works as spyware on tourists' phones. From the Rational National, economist explains your job is screwing you. And angry Meghan McCain may exit The View. Oh, that'll be a loss. From the Humanist Report, Fox News hosts admit they're total hacks, then laugh about it. From Vice News, the establishment politician trying to win back Greece. From MCSC, Democrats steal Tulsi Gabbard's election integrity legislation, and everyone should be outraged. Honestly, I don't think everyone should. If they steal her legislation, that's fine, because that means they're having to move in the right direction. It doesn't matter who puts it forth. As long as it's put out there. AOC's district attorney pick, Tiffany Caban of Queens, has her nomination stolen from her. Watch Emma Vigeland of TYT call Tulsi one of her favorite politicians. NBC put a pimple on Tulsi's face during the debate. No, this is not a joke. Really, dude, that's nothing to even worry about. Policy, policy, policy. Who gives a damn if it's them acting like a damn 5-year-old and trying to put a pimple on her in the debates? So what? Let NBC act like petulant children. Policy, policy, policy is what matters. And promoting Warren will guarantee Bernie is defeated in the Democratic primary. Again, not really. It'll make it a hell of a lot harder for Bernie. And from C-SPAN, President Trump's complete remarks at 4th of July's salute to America. Finally, on Friday, from Secular Talk, Washington Post fact check of Bernie is incomprehensibly dumb. Disturbing pictures emerge from immigrant detention centers. Big money donor fleeing Biden in ominous sign for his campaign. Justice Democrats make Glenn Beck shook. Glenn Beck's just one of these whiners, I swear. Amazing compilation exposes soulless charlatans at Fox News with their own words. How they tried to attack Obama for doing the same thing Trump does, but cheering Trump for doing those things. Literally. If that doesn't tell you they're nothing but propaganda, nothing will. From Status Quo, Elizabeth Warren blows off Status Quo's Medicare for All question, saying, just a second. Joe Biden's latest bravery, the NRA is not our enemy. Yes, they are. Elizabeth Warren supporter says she can execute Bernie Sanders' policies by playing the game. Trump supporter says Planned Parenthood was created to abort black babies. Honestly, I don't know how. Maybe they like him because he is so stupid and just like them. Elizabeth Warren supporter says, I like Bernie Sanders, but I think we need someone younger. And Bernie Sanders supporter says, Bernie has had more wins in 2 years than the other candidates combined. From Democracy Now!, Noam Chomsky on fascism, nuclear war, or nuclear weapons, climate change, Julian Assange, and more. Ousted Honduran President Zelaya. U.S.-backed coup has destabilized my nation, forcing migrants to flee. From Philip DeFranco, a conversation with episode 3. My wife reveals the best and worst about Philip DeFranco and more. From the Rational National, Rational Live, morning scroll through Twitter. Plus, media claims Bernie 2020 in trouble, but facts show otherwise. From the Humanist Report, Mike Cernovich thinks Bernie Sanders is being too mean to Trump. From Vice News, World War I bombs are still being found over 100 years later. From from Vox, Jacob Collier deconstructs a Stevie Wonder classics. Duke. Do 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 do. Feel it all over. I suck at singing, but yeah, to give you an example. And from MCSC, end of Citizens United. Progressives introduce resolution to corporate influence on politics, to end corporate influence on politics. Former White House and Pentagon official says Tulsi may be the biggest threat to Trump. Election rigging in Queens and 3 key things we think would help Tulsi's campaign. And Bernie hasn't gotten anything done in 30 years, says former Clinton staffer on MSNBC. And that, my back, is the news of the week. My back. I'm not singing the rest of that song, because it always comes to mind when I say that. My neck. My back. Anyway, as always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, and learn. But I'll see you all again in the next video. But until then, later.